On Point is brought to you by Crow Jamaica.
A very good evening and welcome to On Point. My name is Patria Kay.
And I'm Dennis Chung.
And we have a lot to talk about,
Yes.
Dennis. It's been an eventful week, certainly heading the list, Hurricane Dorian.
Yeah, it was devastating. I mean, when you look at the video coming out of that, out of the islands, and seeing the waves crashing up against the front door of people and around their homes, and the wind, I mean, I cannot imagine 185 mile per hour wind.
And that was actually sustained from about 5 o'clock on Sunday, or on Sunday.
For 48 hours, almost 48 hours.
Exactly. The actual sustained winds of 185 miles went up until about 3 o'clock Sunday morning, and then it was still Category 5 winds. I mean, I often make the analogy of the fastest you can drive legally on Highway 2000 is 68 miles per hour. And we're talking about wind speeds 3 times that.
Well, I'm just imagining if a car is hitting against a wall for 24 hours at that speed over and over and over again.
There's no way you survive that.
No.
There's no way you survive that.
It must go down.
And Bahamas is in that hurricane belt. Just like ourselves, they have this hurricane season every 6 months. So they actually have building codes within the Bahamas that are built to sustain Category 4 hurricanes.
Yeah, but not at that length of time.
Absolutely not.
And, you know, it comes to mind that the fact is that it's these small island states that have the least to do with climate change that's going to suffer the most from climate change.
Because you're looking at a place like the Bahamas, small archipelago of islands. How do 400,000 people pick up the pieces? You cannot tax 400,000 people enough to be able to recoup from a Category 5 hurricane.
It's going to be extremely difficult. And, you know, it brings to mind the fact also that the Prime Minister was on record of saying that he really wanted to do nothing with CARICOM. I guess he must be having some
because we are coming to his rescue, as we should. I think it's things like this, natural disasters like this, that remind us that we are one Caribbean. No care how we think we're bigger than everybody else and how we want to isolate ourselves and it's me in my small corner. When the rubber hits the road, like now, we all have to stand up for each other.
And you know, the next hurricane that is on the horizon, Patria, is a leadership challenge, PNP leadership challenge.
That happens on Saturday the 7th.
Yeah. And you know, I think it's healthy. It's healthy that, you know, there can be challenges. I believe that we need a system like in the US, you know, where people select their leaders every 4 years. But one of my biggest disappointments with every time we have this sort of thing is the rhetoric from the supporters. You know, I think it's just not good.
I think my disappointment in the whole way that the whole campaigning has happened is I want a candidate to stand in front of me and tell me why me.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the conversation has been about why not Andrew Holness, why not the other Peter. I want to hear somebody stand up and defend themselves, not in a passing way, but I want to be able to vote you in because you are the best person for the job and not because you are the lesser of 3 evils. And I think that has been my disappointment with both candidates in the run-up to the election. But also the point that you make about, I don't know if they remember that at the end of all of this, come September 8th,
they're all one.
They need to be on the same page and that they need each other. Peter Bunting and his budget, his pockets, and his machinery, his organizing machinery, and his winning statistics are a requirement for the People's National Party. And the history and support that a Peter Phillips has, they need that too if ever they're going to face a Jamaica Labour Party in this kind of condition.
So it makes no sense destroying each other. It reminds you of the Iran-Iraq 7-year war when they forgot what they were fighting over.
And it makes us look on and say, this is pure pettiness. Because all of the mudslings that you do, in a space where social media and access to information is aplenty.
Yeah.
All the mudslinging that you do internally goes external.
Yeah,
and the things that you say about your opposition, we're going to hear it.
Yeah,
and we're going to carry it into the general election.
Yeah.
So tread with caution.
Yeah.
Well, folks, we're talking education for the show today. We're talking about a teacher crisis. Is one looming? We're going to be finding out from two of the players in the education sector about what we can do to, one, retain our teachers, and two, make conditions better for our young people.
But before we jump into that discussion, Patria, let's take a look back at some of the top business stories of the week.
At number 5 this week, will Brexit be delayed until 2020? In a vote on Wednesday, the House of Commons rejected UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson's plan for a snap election on October 15. The Prime Minister also clashed with MPs who voted to seek an extension to delay leaving the European Union until 2020. But the Prime Minister was adamant that he would leave the European Union with or without a deal in October. This forced MPs to pass new legislation to try and stop him. The new law says the Prime Minister will have until October 19 to either pass a deal in Parliament or get MPs to approve a no-deal Brexit, and after that, he will have to request an extension for a UK departure date of January 31, 2020. At number 4, Hurricane Dorian ripped through the northern Bahamas as a Category 5 storm, clocking winds of up to 180 miles per hour. This was the strongest storm to hit the Bahamas ever, leaving several dead and billions of dollars in destruction in its wake. The hurricane made landfall on September 1 and battered the Abaco Islands and Grand Bahama in the north of the archipelago for 2 days. The European Union says about 70,000 people are in need of immediate aid. Parts of the Bahamas received up to 35 inches of rain. Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis said the Bahamas was facing one of the greatest national crises in our country's history. The International Red Cross estimates that some 45% of homes on Grand Bahama and the Abacos have been severely damaged or destroyed. At number 3, 2 members have left Jamaica's Integrity Commission in the same week. The country's corruption watchdog was first hit by revelations that Dirk Harrison, its acting director of corruption prosecutions, had indicated in a letter to the Governor General Sir Patrick Allen on August 4 that he would be proceeding on retirement effective September 1. Then a few days later, Integrity Commission Chairman retired Justice Carl Harrison resigned, citing personal reasons for walking away. At number 2, the Gaston Brown-led government in Antigua and Barbuda appears to be at a standoff with the Republic Financial Holdings over the sale of Scotiabank's shares on the island. Reports are that the disagreement surrounds the amount of money the Republic Financial Holdings demanded from the government for the purchase of the Antigua branch. In its letter to the government, Republic Financial Holdings reportedly claimed that the government of Antigua and Barbuda had misconstrued its intention to value Scotiabank's assets for the Antigua branch. But Prime Minister Gaston Brown is claiming that Republic Financial Holdings was attempting to extort his government into paying 4 times the amount that they would have paid to absorb Scotiabank's assets. At number 1, more states of emergency to help fight crime in Jamaica. Prime Minister Andrew Holness today announced a state of public emergency in the parishes of Clarendon and St. Catherine. These latest states of emergency will initially last for 2 weeks. Since March, Prime Minister Andrew Holness has declared 3 states of public emergency, encompassing the parishes of St. Catherine, Westmoreland, Hanover, St. James, and Clarendon.
When we come back, solving the teacher crisis. We're going to be hearing from the president of the Jamaica Teachers Association as well as principal of the Alice High School right here on Point after the break. Welcome back to On Point. Now, Minister with responsibility for education, Carl Samuda, gave assurances that all was in place for the start of the school year. Here's a bit of what he said in his address to the nation.
A total of 1,000 public schools at the infant, primary, and secondary levels will open their doors to welcome almost 500,000 students and teachers. Rest assured that the Ministry of Education has worked very hard to ensure that we will have a smooth start to this new school year. Funds have been provided and sent to all primary and secondary schools. The ministry will be providing a total of $11 billion to all schools to underwrite their operational expenses, including the provision of lunches for students on path. All shortages of school furniture have been addressed. Indeed, 32,000 pieces of furniture have been ordered. Additionally, 8,000 pieces have been repaired. In addition, 30 schools have been provided with funds to purchase their own furniture. Over 90% of our schools have had minor repairs completed. The ministry is mindful of the urgent need to make breakfast available to students on path. And this year, we will start by providing 70,000 of these students with breakfast. Special arrangements have been put in place to assist students with transportation, especially in rural areas. In this regard, an amount of $380 million have been provided for 8 parishes. This is an increase of $180 million over last year. All books required to satisfy the curriculum needs have been purchased and delivered at a cost of $800 million. Arrangements have been made for schools to be provided with water tanks where necessary. We expect this to be completed within the next few months. We are also working with the NWC and the Rural Water Supply Limited to ensure that a more consistent supply of water is provided to all schools. The government's policy on the non-mandatory payment of school fees remains unchanged. No child is to be discriminated against or denied access to their education because of an inability by their parents to make a contribution. With God's help and hard work, I am confident that our children will achieve great success this year.
And now to talk more about the reality on the ground as we kick off the 2019-2020 academic year, we're now joined by the President of the Jamaica Teachers Association, Mr. Owen Speed, and Principal of Yallahs High, Mark Malava. Gentlemen,
thank you very much.
Let me start with you, JTA President. School year has started. How has it started in your estimation?
In my estimation, we could say it started fairly well. We had some hiccups in terms of transportation on the first day in some parishes. Well, just a few parishes though. And we have problems with schools not having water in the pipes. We had those difficulties to start up. As well as there are some other matters like principals and vice principals not being appointed, even though they are acting for several years now. We have had one case of a principal acting for 6 years and has not been appointed. And we need some of those things to be speeded up.
Well, let me ask you, Owen, this thing that I'm hearing from you about the challenges, right? It's like I hear it every year. The same thing over and over again. Is the problem with the administration at the school level or the Ministry of Education?
It could be a little bit of both. But it's more so coming from the side of the Ministry of Education. And I say so because there are times, for example, when the forms are sent down, all the documents are sent in, and then you return to the ministry only to hear, or when month end, you find that you're not getting any pay accordingly, the proper remuneration kind of thing, or no pay at all. And then you are hearing that, oh, you didn't send this document down. But you can't prove it by backing up what you photocopied, right, for the file. And you can prove that you sent it. So most of the times, it's coming from the side of the ministry. They are making some efforts. Let's just put the facts out there that they are making some effort. We can see a little bit of improvement, especially at Region 1, for sure. We are seeing a little bit of improvement in those areas. But in terms of the water, I have said to them, I've been saying to them for the past year maybe, that the fact that the road work is something coming from government, then the government, the ministry, they should take charge of getting water into the schools.
I want you to hold a thought on the water issue because it's something that we have to deal with in detail. I want to go back to some of those administrative issues that Dennis mentioned. The Ministry of Education is a hazard waiting to happen. Anybody who steps foot in that building and sees the mountain of paper that come from the schools to the ministry, sees the lines of people who are upset because they are about to retire or have retired and they're looking for a manila envelope with their information. You should be pressing from where you sit for that to change.
And I am pressing, and you will hear me pressing more. I am happy to be the president going from 2019 into 2020 because 2020 means something to me. It means perfect vision. And we are looking out for changes in the system, significant changes in the system, landmark changes, because the database that they have there, in fact, we want them to have a database, let's put it that way, because as you said, paper works in the main.
So, Mark, following up on that, I mean, how do you as principal deal with this sort of situation? It must hamper your activities at the school.
It does hamper things from an administrative standpoint. I certainly can understand where Mr. Spade is coming from. I have had those experiences myself. Let's take, for example, that you are beginning the school year, you have recruited teachers, you have gotten the documentation in, you have sent it down to the ministry. From me, for example, I have to travel to Portland from St. Thomas to drop off
physical paperwork
to drop off those documents. By the time it gets routed through the system to go over to central ministry, 2, 3, 4 months would have passed and teachers would not have gotten their salaries. New teachers, sometimes just coming out of fresh out of teachers college, just ready to start life, don't have any reserve money in their bank account to rock back on. You know, it does dampen their spirit, especially when they come very enthused and ready to really jump in. But month one passes, September passes, you don't get the salary. Second month passes, you don't get the salary. You're down in November, December still. And I have had experience where I had a teacher going 5 months without a salary from the Ministry of Education.
Because paperwork was missing?
Because there were different issues. At one point, for the most part, it got stuck in the ministry on someone's desk, not moving. When we made the checks, we were told it was sent up. Lo and behold, I was at the ministry.
And you're talking about the 21st century when we have computers.
And we're talking about 21st century. I was at the ministry standing beside the gentleman. And when I asked my secretary to call the ministry to find out, they said that they had sent it up when he indicated no.
The amount of money that you spend on paper, we could buy lots more tanks, we could provide some buses for transportation, there are inefficiencies that certainly as the JTA president, as a principal, what can you agitate for from where you sit?
Well, certainly from my standpoint, I believe the ministry needs to be a little bit more tech savvy. I believe they need to come up with a system in which you can upload the 503 forms, so that it is routed centrally to ministry.
And you can track it.
And you can track
Nobody
it.
Can say it's on somebody's desk and I don't know.
Exactly. So you can, just like what happens with the British Embassy, you upload documents in certain spaces. Mm-hmm. So if it is that a document is outstanding, then the system will prompt you to say it will not be sent because this is outstanding, or you can override it to send these in the meantime based on discussions that you may have.
So is it that when the problem is the leadership at the ministry? And when I say leadership, I don't mean the policy level of the minister, because this is something that cuts across administration.
Yes.
So it must be something wrong with the administrative leadership there, and maybe we need to look to new leadership.
It's systematic. It's systematic. It's not just about a political party or which party is in government. when I speak, I say governments because it's all of them. This has been going from ever since I know the ministry, and I'm in there now for about 30 years. And this has been going on. It's frustrating to the stakeholders, the people, the teachers. It's frustrating to the administrators because sometimes what you get is a backlash as an administrator. You get a backlash from your subordinates because they are saying, oh, I wonder if the principal doesn't like me, and that is why maybe he threw away the paper somewhere and didn't take it down. And we get that kind of thing going right through the system all the time. So they need to go electronic, allow people to even apply online. I think that's the way to go. And anywhere you are, you can pull up people's file rather than telling people that, oh, your file is missing. It should be on that database electronically.
On this vein of administration, I do want to ask whether or not the name given to the current education minister, whether or not it has been a hindrance to your operations at all. A full-fledged education minister versus a minister with responsibility for education. Potato.
I'm almost sure you hear me calling for it. I mean, I've been agitating for the Prime Minister to now name a minister. I think it is disrespectful, if you ask me. It's the only ministry in Jamaica that they would treat like this. And as far as I am concerned, this is a ministry that produces all professionals.
What's the difference between a minister of education versus what Carl Samuda is now, a minister with responsibility for education?
Let me just clear that, because right as it stands, the Minister of Education is the Prime Minister, right? And the interim minister cannot really put forward policies. He can't really go and plan for short term, medium term, long term. He can't do that because he doesn't know if tomorrow morning he'll wake up and hear that he's no longer the minister. So there's so much uncertainty. It's very, very difficult for him to go and sit down to do a plan and then to hear tomorrow, next week, next month that he's out. But we have been going now for 6 months without a minister. No, and that is where the hypocrisy in Jamaica is. People keep talking about how important education is. And as soon as the children fail here, they point fingers at the teachers or the principals, right? But we are seeing now that even from the top, and nobody's calling for a minister.
Perhaps it is me not understanding, because I don't understand what the restraint is being minister with responsibility for versus a full-fledged named, as Ruel Reid was Minister of Education. You wanted to say?
It goes further than that, because I wanted to just piggyback on what my colleague was, Mr. Speed was saying, that within the ministry itself, there are several persons who are acting. So you have an acting minister, you have an acting PS, you have an acting chief education officer, you have an acting deputy chiefs, and it just works its way down into the system.
There are some legal matters that cause some of that to be.
Well, to the best of my knowledge, there's one legal matter that would have caused that to be, but these persons were acting even before that matter became a legal matter. I mean, how the ministry is, there is a sense of uncertainty.
You're saying that it is an acting ministry.
Like a play. It's like a play.
You know, there's a sense of uncertainty within the ministry itself. You are not clear as to the direction of the ministry, because you, as Mr. Speed said, you can wake up tomorrow morning and hear that Mr. Samuda is no longer the minister. If he is going to have the responsibility, then appoint him.
Are there decisions in limbo because people are not full-fledged ministers or appointed?
Well, I don't know.
There's an arm that deals with that. There's an arm of the ministry, the Teacher Services Commission, that deals with that. So I couldn't say categorically that because there's not a minister, full minister, then it is affecting that. There is a problem that we're facing now. There's an unaccredited program by the National College of Educational Leadership, and what they're instituting at the ministry is that through the Teacher Services Commission, they are saying to people who have even completed bachelor's and master's degree that they must go and do that program at NCEL for them to be appointed as principal or as principal. Now, I have a serious problem with that, because one of the first things is that the aspiring principals must pay for this course. And many of the teachers really struggle to complete, and I mean financially, to complete the master's program or the bachelor's program. In fact, some of them are still in debt after completing. And then you are saying to them, you have to go and do this aspiring principals program in order for you to be appointed. I see that as cruelty. And what they are doing is only, it seems, appointing the ones who have completed the NSEL program.
And the issue you have is the fact that they have to pay for it.
They have to pay.
If it were offered for free, would you have a difficulty?
I would still have a difficulty because it's unaccredited. It's not accredited at all. And the master's program is accredited. 3 of the 4 courses that they do at NSEL they are done in the master's program in educational leadership. 3 out of 4.
Yeah, but I want to disagree with you there a little bit, Owen. First of all, I don't think the issue is that they have to pay for it.
No.
Secondly, I think it is important that if you're becoming a principal, you have to do some leadership development. Right? I don't know how the program is structured. But the bigger issue, I think, is that teachers are underpaid. And I think that is the issue. Don't go and say that I want a free thing because I don't have any money. What we should do is say that we need to compensate our teachers better. And there are different ways to do that, right? But that, I think, is a fundamental issue.
Let me put that into perspective, though, because, and just allow me a little.
Yeah.
I have a big problem if you are telling me to duplicate the courses that I've done before and paid for already. I have a problem with that, because the courses that NSEL is putting forward, those courses, if you do just an ordinary educational leadership course for a bachelor's or a master's degree, you would have completed those already.
If memory serves me correct, part of why NSEL came about was because there were some deficiencies in some of the school administrators that they recognized. So they weren't real.
Perceived.
There were
because
and I'm going from memory, and I don't want to misquote anybody. There were accounting issues, running the books.
Yes,
of a school.
And that is another issue that I have too. That primary schools should be given bursaries, because you have big primary schools out there. They're dealing with a large tuck shop, a large canteen, and all the receivables and so on come in. It's a whole lot of entries for a cash book.
I want to bring in Mark, but you are not of the belief that there are gaps in the administrators of some schools.
In terms of accounting.
Not just accounting, how to be a good principal and run a tight ship.
Well, certainly you'll have good principals and you'll have bad principals in anything at all, in any field. You will have some good ones and some bad ones. The fact of the matter, though, is that they did absolutely no research before coming up with NSEL. NSEL is just a program to sort of get up. We're spending $40 million per year to run this college, and that 40 million could go to so many other things in education.
Let me ask Mark, did you do that course?
Yes, I've done the course. I did both programs.
Both programs meaning?
The aspiring and the effective.
Okay.
But I wanted to make some corrections that Mr. Speed had said. One, you pay for the aspiring principals program, and not the effective principals program. So the aspiring principal program, in other words, you will not get into the interview unless you are in or have graduated from the program.
Yeah? Repeat that, sir.
You will not get into the interview.
I want my listeners to be clear.
Yeah.
So there are 2 programs.
There are 2 different programs.
There's an aspiring principal. I am not a principal.
Yeah. Yes.
I am not a vice principal.
No.
I am a member of the academic
you could
staff.
Be a vice,
you could be a vice
principal.
Yeah.
With aspirations to become principal one day.
And you pay for that.
Yes, so that is what you pay for. If you are a principal, then the effective principals program you do not pay for.
All right.
But
that one helps existing principals do their job.
in all fairness, the NSEL program emerged out of the Ray Davis report on education. I think it was 2001, when there were when the report highlighted some deficiencies within the system.
Hold the thought. We're going to come back and talk about some of those deficiencies and where we go next, right here on Point. Thank you so much for staying with us on Point. We're continuing the conversation on the state of Jamaica's education system. Just before the break, we were hearing from Mark, who actually did the NSEL course, both of them, and you're trying to make some clarifications as to how it may have come about.
Yeah, as I was saying earlier, it emerged out of the Ray Davis report on education. I think that it was commissioned by the then Prime Minister, P.J. Patterson. And so NSEL was born. To be quite frank and honest, there were some deficiencies in the system from a leadership or an administrative perspective.
We're talking about a report more than a decade old.
Yeah. How long now is NSEL? More than 5 years. More than 5 years. So there were some different deficiencies in terms of accountability, in terms of ability. Persons were promoted based on years of service and not necessarily based on competence. And during this time, the programs in relation to educational leadership were not really emerging out of the teachers' colleges at the level that they are currently emerging out of. So many administrators who were interested in educational leadership in terms of getting qualification, many of them would have to do it overseas on online programs.
Having done both programs, have you grown?
Yeah, I believe I have, to be honest with you. I believe I am also doing a PhD in educational leadership, and it has helped to cement a lot of the things that one ought to do. One of the best things for me with the program is that you get to interact with other school, with other administrators, other school leaders. You get to bounce ideas off them. You get to engage them, and you do a lot of problem solving, critical thinking. And you're in a better position now to go back into the school and effect the change that you ought. I really
do
believe
I now take away from what I'm hearing you say that you think it's a necessary program?
I believe it is necessary. I believe it is important, but I believe it ought to complement.
Sir Speed, this is one of your principals who doesn't agree with your position.
But I believe it ought to complement the formal programs in the tertiary institutions. I think the more the better.
Let me say to you that I didn't do NSEL program, and I won't be doing NSEL program. My school, though, is out of the 115 primary schools that were inspected by the National Education Inspectorate, my school was the only one rated as high as good, and I didn't do NSEL.
The first time around.
The only one, yes. Out of 115. Let me continue, though. Yes, go ahead.
No, but I'm saying, perhaps that is exactly the argument why the other principals may need training.
No.
If they are not passing the standards that are set, they need help.
Listen, don't get me wrong, I am not against NSEL, What I am saying about NSEL is that you cannot be using it as a qualifying standard when the
why not?
But let me say it. When the code of regulations that governs the all things in education in Jamaica says categorically that you are qualified to be the principal of a primary school if you have a bachelor's degree. For qualification for a high school, a master's degree in education, and that's it.
But that's the bare minimum.
That's the qualification.
Yeah, but the
standard. If you are shutting out people because what you are saying to people is that you cannot even enter the door of the thing. You have people who are there acting for years and they are doing a fantastic job.
But Mr. Speed, if you are qualified, if you have a minimum qualification for something, it does not mean that you automatically get selected to be a part.
No.
To go there. You understand what I'm
no,
saying?
But it should
it's
mean
it's like I'm an accountant, and everybody who passes the ACA is a qualified accountant, but doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to get to become a financial controller.
All right, let me just say this to you. It shouldn't mean that they are shut out either if they don't have it. But well, let me say this to you. As I said to you, the code says one thing, and the people are practicing the opposite of that by bringing in NSEL as something that must be done. And all of that is illegal.
But I don't see anything wrong with it.
How do we fix the system? What is the proposal that you have on the table? So if it isn't NSEL,
I am saying you don't need a college set up for that. All you need to do is infuse those courses into the normal program. And if you have principals who are deficient, then you set up some short courses. No, some short courses for them. It's not a college. NSEL is a 9-month program.
Yeah, but I don't agree with that. Mr. Sweet, with respect, I don't agree with that. I believe that people who are responsible for education, right, have the responsibility to put in place what they think is necessary. Now, if they're failing, if they're not achieving the results, that's a different thing. Let's talk about that. But I don't think it is wrong. There's anything wrong with a group of people responsible for outcome of an industry to say that you have to do this.
No, because you know why it is wrong. You know another reason why it is wrong. There's a mechanism in schools where the boards appraise principals, and so if the people are there as principals already.
But then one of the problems we have with the school system is that we have some very ineffective boards.
Allow him to finish his point and then I'll come to you, Mark.
No. I am saying there's a mechanism. So it's the same way I can tell you that the NSEL is ineffective, or somebody from the board could say, okay, the NSEL is ineffective.
But you're saying that as a person who hasn't gone through the program.
No. I'm saying that it's the same. Yes, he has complimented them. But fine, there are people out there who could be saying that NSEL is of no use and they went there and learned nothing, right? True? So it's the same way now you could say, okay, the boards are doing nothing, right? So I'm saying to you, there's a mechanism though, set out by the Code of Regulations that the people are assessed each year. If you are appraised and you are found to be, you have some principals out there who are assessed and they are found to be exceeding expectation. Yet they are refused appointment because they are telling them that they must go through NSEL. That is unfair to them.
You know, there are. I want you to make your point. Go ahead.
I mean, and this is where the failing of the ministry comes in my mind. Yes, there is a code of regulation that renders certain things illegal based on how it takes place in the system, or it unfolds in the system. The regulation is a 1980 regulation, so it has not kept abreast of the realities that exist on the ground in relation to the education system, and that is where the failing of the ministry really comes in, and it comes across administrations. Yeah, the Education Code of Regulations should have been changed out, amended long ago, to keep up with the realities on the ground and the changes that have taken place within the system. The truth is, and from my perspective, it's always good. Yes, you have that academic qualification on your belt, but education is a continuous spiral. Yes. Yeah. Pedagogy changes. Philosophies emerge, that sort of thing. Some philosophies become obsolete, and it's important, just like teachers, to always be developing themselves. Yes. And for me, it's important, and NSEL does lend, does provide that platform. It puts you on
that path.
Yeah.
I'm going to step away from the NSEL.
Nothing different from the courses in the university.
But you can't say so having not done it.
No, yes. I know them.
I'm going to step away from the
courses.
I'm going to step away from the NSEL conversation.
I've done the courses, 3 of the 4.
I'm going to step away because there are lots of other matters under the education umbrella that we have to deal with. You both come from different spaces in the education world. You are a principal of a primary school,
Yes.
you are a principal of a high school. And both of you would have had the experience of the first PEP cohort. And I want to understand a little bit, you're just about to have the experience of that cohort coming in. You would have had the
He really
experience
doesn't
of...
have that
He doesn't
experience
have
yet
that experience
at all.
yet.
It's just
And
2
so I
days,
do want
2
to
days you got.
understand- Exactly. So I do want to understand your, having gone through this first year, having seen the results, is this going to give us the kind of change in thinking of our young people that it was intended to? And what are you looking for this new batch of students that you would not have seen in previous batches? Let me take you first, Mr. Speed.
Well, the PEP, I like the idea of developing critical thinking in the kids. I like that idea. However, this year's, can I say this year? 2018, 2019.
Yes.
For that year, the grade 6 children, they were rushed into PEP because what we knew should have happened was that and what was promised was that they would have a 3-year profile. And that 3-year profile would have had to start at grade 4 and come through grade 5 and 6. But they didn't wait. They rushed it on to the children, so they didn't have a profile really. They just had what they did in grade 6, just some exam scores. So it was rushed. At the beginning of it, the exam, the teachers didn't have the curriculum guide at all. They didn't have any curriculum guide. So they had to go around the place and drop off curriculum guides on a Saturday and a Sunday at bars and all these places.
Bars?
Rushed, yes. Yeah, the Pazers, shop Pazers and so on. School closed, so they had to leave them and so that people get them. And it was out of my agitation too that they did that, because I was saying to them, you can't tell the teachers to teach and they don't know what to teach. They were adamant that they gave them on some thumb drives before. Half of the thumb drives couldn't be opened.
Are your teachers better prepared for PEP September morning?
Yes, they are. No, this set coming up, they will be better prepared. They would have been even much better prepared if these teachers had known the results of the performance task, for example, and all the other tests, because what they did was to produce some scale scores that nobody understands.
So is it getting better though?
The teachers are getting into a better rhythm now.
Well, not just the
than before.
teachers, but the whole
the children, the
curriculum.
parents, yes.
Everything
I
is
think
getting better.
I think it will.
Let's talk about the
eventually.
children part. Are we seeing critical skills developing in these young people?
I think it's too early to call. I mean, it's just a year really that it's been introduced.
So you don't expect a big change from your first 4 months?
Well, you see, I believe that PEP we could have gotten more out of PEP if it was better implemented. Certainly, as Mr. Speed said, it was rushed. The ministry was warned against rushing it. The former minister decided to push it through nonetheless. There were issues in terms of curriculum, teachers having that capacity to really teach that curriculum. There were issues in terms of resources. So this cohort, in terms of the implementation of PEP, I believe that we would have done them a disservice. It would have been better served if it was phased in over a period of time rather than just through the entire system.
But then that all come back to where we started, that the administration and Ministry of Education needs some help.
There were some major issues in that regard, and persons were warned. The persons who are on the front line of the education system had warned, do not do it this way.
So let me ask though, with the incremental changes we're going to get year after year, am I expecting to see a graduating class of 2025 as a batch of thinkers?
That's the objective of PEP. The jury is still out on it.
But how are you going to implement that? Because you start them off as thinkers in grade 6. How do you pick up that baton in the high school and continue to encourage them to be that kind of critical thinker when there's no change at the high school level?
Well, and that raises another issue. Certainly in terms of the high school level, there are, I have referred it constantly as an apartheid education system, certainly at the high school. We now have what is known as the APS curriculum.
You mean because of the traditional high schools and the...
And upgraded high school. We now have what is known as the APS curriculum, where students are placed on pathways. Right. And it's really a failing of the primary school system, while the APS is a response. Alternative pathway is a response to that failing. Students are coming to the table at the developmental phase. When you look at their profile, many of the students who are sent to
the problem is really at the early childhood and
early
primary
childhood,
school level.
Many of the students who come at the high school, particularly at upgraded high school, are coming with certain deficiencies. And so it takes considerable, and we have not even gotten to the realm of critical thinking. We are talking about the basic level of literacy and numeracy.
When you take these alternate pathways and you come out with a skill, you have a heart training, are there jobs out there for the people who are coming out with hairdressing and carpentry and engineering and I don't know, what are those things that you are teach them? And considering that the vast majority of your students will leave fifth form and go into the world of work, one, are they finding jobs, and two, are they ready to work?
Well, you know, that's for me is another issue in and of itself. My task as principal is to get them ready. What I am saying is that we are not able to get them to the point that they ought to, for them to now go over into the world of work, because they come with certain deficiencies.
Can't read.
And resources, particularly for upgraded high schools, non-traditional high schools, is lacking. I have made the point time and time again. You give upgraded high schools the same amount of money, 17,500 or thereabout per head to upgraded high schools as well as traditional
when they
high
should
schools.
be getting more.
Yeah, it invariably costs more to educate a child in an upgraded high school than it does for a child in a traditional school.
But let me ask.
I just wanted to go
the figure
further.
is really $19,000. It's 19 per student.
Yeah, but I want to go further now, because you know, going into the boys in particular, when you look in upgraded high school, you have boys outnumbering girls almost 2 to 1. So the primary school has failed the boys. They have made their way over into the upgraded high schools.
And they're being failed again.
And they are being, by and large, they are being failed again because of resource constraints within the system. And I would add that the parental contribution, most parents at the traditional high school will make that contribution. So the collection rate, they are paying anywhere between 15,000 up for traditional high schools. 80% of the parents will pay at the upgraded high schools, 20% or less.
September morning, what is your collection like?
I have not been briefed on it as yet, to be honest with you. We're just in day 2, and we really have to be dealing with some issues, shortage of teachers, that sort of thing.
But let me ask a related question, Mr. Speed. Is one of the solutions to the issues that we have that we should have discriminatory pay for teachers based on performance or the subject matter they teach?
No.
But why not?
It can't be. Let me just piggyback.
If one person is more productive than another in terms of the output, why not pay them more?
That it's too difficult to prove.
It's not difficult to prove.
Yes, it is.
Why is it difficult?
But let me just say something about the primary versus the thing. The blame again, you have to be careful where you point fingers, because one of the things with what is happening in this system is that we are seeing large class sizes in the primary schools, and what you have is that maybe about 25% of them are experiencing severe learning disabilities, and they are getting no intervention. So even if they are assessed, they are basically going through all the grades of the primary school without
and you must
intervention, because there's no, there are many specialists teachers to deal with these children in Jamaica anymore. They have migrated.
But that's the point. But that's the point. Coming back to
Yes,
the pay
yes,
for
and-
productivity,
all right, no.
because if you have specialist teachers, right, or teachers that have greater demand for their service, like math or the STEM subjects, or I mean, why should someone
All right.
who is trained in how to count stars get the same amount of money
All
like
right,
someone who
all
is
right,
trained how to teach
all right.
math?
Let me go with that now and show you why I rubbish that argument of paying. First of all, it's going to create rift in the system.
What
That's
sort of
one.
rift?
Yes, it's going to create.
What sort of rift?
You have to look at the emotive side of things. And let me tell
This
you
is
why.
output you're talking about,
No,
not emotion.
yeah, but
if you want to manage emotions, you turn
No,
psychologist.
No, output
You don't
is-
turn teacher.
The system is not producing bread and cheese and biscuits. You're talking about people's emotion and all of these things
No,
coming out
this is
to
not
play,
an
and
emotional
it
thing,
will
Mr.
crash.
Speed.
It will crash a system. I'm just telling you. I'm warning against it, and I'm warning against it against the background that in Jamaica we deal with equal pay for equal work. You can't get around that. We look at
But
qualifications.
question is it
equal work is
work?
productivity.
Yes, but let me-
Equal work is not number of hours you put in.
Let-
It's
let-
how
let-
productive
no,
you
no,
are.
no,
But
no.
listen.
To prove productivity is too difficult in education. I'm telling you that. All right, hold on. Let's stick a pin. You are at the grade.
I'm allow you the final
Yeah,
word. Stick
yeah.
this
Allow
pin.
you.
Go ahead. Stick the pin.
You are at a grade 6 class, and your class does well this year. Who gets the credit? You alone are the grade 5 teacher or the grade 4 teacher.
No, but you can develop metrics like every other business.
Just-
It is a very difficult thing, but there are
Very
people who
difficult.
specialize in developing
I said
that.
I'd give you the final word. I'm really going to give my
But
final word.
I must support Mr. Speed on this, because we're losing our teachers to overseas. Teachers are being paid $4,000 or $5,000 US.
And we can't match
We
that.
can't match it. So if you even give him more, it's not going to help. How much more
It
can
does
you
not
give?
necessarily rectify or correct the issue. with
Mr.
the
Barbier,
strong
I have
suspicion.
a bachelor's and you have a bachelor's. Why should you be paid more than
We're gonna talk about it.
You know where you
I have
address
strong
productivity
suspicion
over
that
time.
We're gonna have to continue this education conversation because it's not about us, the four of us
Yes.
here.
Exactly.
It's about
Bigger
our
than
young
us.
people and it's
I
about the
agree with
future of
you. Yeah.
Jamaica. I thank you for taking the time to talk to us. I wish
agree
you
with
both
you.
the very best school years, not just for you, but for your
For the children.
teachers
Yes.
and also for
Yes,
the students.
yes.
We'll
Thanks
take a
a
break,
lot.
folks. When we come back, more on point. Welcome back to On Point. The latest statistics out of the Ministry of Education indicate that there are some 23,000 teachers employed to the ministry in the 2017-2018 academic year. But how many of those teachers were trained and how do those numbers stack up to the year previous? We're going to find out in the numbers.
The Ministry of Education, Youth and Information says it employed 23,426 teachers during the 2017-2018 academic year. That figure consisted of 4,820 males and 18,606 females in the public formal education system. Approximately 88% of the number of teachers in the public sector are trained. Trained university graduates accounted for 65.1% of trained teachers in the system. In infant schools and infant departments, approximately 93.6% of the teachers are trained. At the primary level, there were 9,557 teachers employed to teach some 213,312 students. There were 12,672 teachers employed at the secondary level, while in the area of special education, 424 teachers were employed in the institutions that responded to the census.
And our on-point team hit the streets and asked Jamaicans, apart from an increase in salary, how can the Jamaican government better incentivize teachers to remain in the classroom?
Increase their salaries. All the good teachers are leaving us. Why? Because we not pay them. And them have families to support.
One of the things I think that the government can really look at is the fact that the housing, if they can provide housing for teachers, more teachers will stay.
Give them smaller classrooms to work with, enhance the classrooms that they're working in, a little bit cooler, more conducive to a learning situation. My son goes to a primary school here, and I went into the classroom and it's deplorable. There's dust flying all over the place. So in order to compensate them more, let them feel more appreciated where they're working.
Where the teachers is concerned, because I was a student once. So I believe the government them give the teacher them more raise, because the teacher them do a lot for the country where the youth them concerned, you see me? So it's a good look, government do the work.
Well, I can do it like GCT, GCT on certain goods and services. That's the best way I see.
Probably put in a performance-based incentive, whereas if their grade or their class, whatever, gets a certain level of passes, their salary would be commensurate with that.
I think the government should subsidize their uniform, because it's one of the only government agencies that don't have subsidized uniform.
My mother is a retired teacher, so I really don't know if, and I also have a friend who's a good friend who's a teacher, there is maybe more offerings in terms of after you finish doing the government's work in terms of retirement, things like those. That could be a possibility for something that could be considered in itself.
Aye.
A good discussion.
We did.
Yes. There's a lot more to talk about, because, I personally do believe that discriminatory pay is the way to go based on performance and output. We have to get to that level of measuring output if we're going to fix the system. Because we're not going to fix the system by relying on these bureaucrats at the Ministry of Education, because that has been a perennial problem that has been there.
There are two big issues for me. We can talk about all of this till the cows come home, but at the end of the day, when these students leave fifth form, when they go out to become productive members of society and they either are underqualified for work or they can't find a job, the alternative is the ugly reality that the country faces day in, day out. And when you listen back to Carl Samuda saying proudly, $11 billion has been dealt out to the schools, what is the end result of that $11 billion spend of taxpayers' monies? And if you recognize that you're not getting the kind of outcome out of the teaching and learning, something serious has to change. I also have a difficulty with, as much as we talk about STEM, the reality is the aptitude of some of our young people, whether it's because them head just not cut out for it or because of the deficiencies with how them coming out of primary school, STEM is not for everybody. And we need to recognize the value in some of those other methods of earning an income. Enough of what people turn dance and sing and musician. How serious are we about the music and arts programs in some of these non-traditional high schools in a way that will have you leave and not just bogo yaga pan a mic, but make it as a business?
Funny, I said to someone the other day, someone very prominent in the entertainment industry, that the problem with our music is that it has always been just a hustle. We don't formalize it into a business. So everyone else around the world will formalize into a business and make a lot of money out of it. But for us, it's a hustle. And that's how we treat most things. I mean, even the construction of the roads look like a hustle.
And there are institutions like Edna Manley, but take it younger, Alpha Boys Home, who teach. Who are the examples to show that we can teach this thing as a professional industry, and you don't need to be 40 years old to learn it. We can teach it at the high school. If we're going to put out tradesmen and give them hard courses, don't just give it to them to be able to check a box and say we did this. Is it meaningful education that's going to make a difference and turn the country around?
And have value attached to it when you come out.
Absolutely.
You can earn from it.
We have a lot to fix, folks, and we have a lot to talk about. We need to take a break today. Thank you so much to all the people who made the show happen. Thanks to our sponsors, our very hard-working production crew. You are superheroes. Until next week, I'm Patria K.
And I'm Dennis Chung.
On Point was brought to you by Crow Jamaica.